Alrighty, I made a thing for Amelia to watch as we go down the road. And then that way she can watch, whatever she loves, like Cocoa Melon. So here we go. Let's make one of these. Alright, I'm making this, and I still ain't got no internet. But I'll have me some videos to throw up there when I do get the internet. Alright, so if I let this right here glue cool down, I can just scrape it off. You want me to turn that off?
I don't know if you need to. Let's see.
Yeah, just go ahead and turn it off. Alright.
You're back?
I'm back on.
Thank you, dear.
You're welcome, dear. Alrighty. So, I have this color that I'm going to use to go around it. Now, I have real thin plastic to use so she can be able to see out of. And all this right here costs $2 plus tax, of course. So what I'm going to get is look at that. I don't even need 2 inches of that. I mean, all this. All right. Let me get this out of my way. I gotta get it out of my way. So hopefully I can continue to catch, to make videos, and one day we'll catch up on them all. Alright, I'm going to, I think right there would be good. Now let's see if we can't just chop it right down. Make sure it's level so I can use some more of this later. Alright, I don't need this now, so I can put it in down here in the other part. And take this off so I can lose my plastic. Why are you in the way, pretty boy? Yeah, you're in the way. Alright. Now, with this, I want to go.
She wasn't like, basically, she pretty much told me don't come down here.
There we go. Now.
The wind. The wind.
Now, see if we can't cut this down. And I'm going to cut 2. Ooh, I did not leave enough to put in my rug thing. I'm not going to worry about it. We'll just throw it away. If we can get it cut. Okay, there's that. Now let's see, let's cut one more. Okay. Now I don't know. No, okay, we're gonna cut one more. Alright, now this right here a little bit is not worth hanging on to. So, oh, good Lord. let's cut this down to where I can put it in my rug pile. There we go. Now, oh, I hope this works out. This was like a brain buster. Alright, now, I know you can't see it, but what I'm going to do is, let's see, I got it this side, don't I, to put it in, or would it be better for me this side? Alright, this side. I want to take and pop holes in, and I hope this will work. That will give it air, and so that it can breathe. Let's see how we can do this. It's going to be very small doing it. No, that's not going to work. Well, yeah, it is too. That gave me some holes, but not all the way holes. Let's see. One we can do. Alright, why are you caught now? Okay, let's go up. I want it to be able to breathe. Alright, it won't do two. So that's kind of like, no, I'm not going to work for you. I figure, let's see if I can't find my org and use my org wherever it is. Oh, let's see. Alright, I got a, come on now, pretty boy. I got a screwdriver, a small screwdriver here, and I'm just going to poke holes in it, so that way it will be able to breathe in this plastic. Maybe if it'll go. Yeah, I think it's going to work, because I want it to be able to breathe in the plastic, and I don't want to punch holes or haven't punched holes at. I think this will work, but I want to make sure it breathes. I know this is hard on your hands, that's for sure. Okay, that's good. Alright. I don't know what I did with my org, but it's got to be out in there somewhere, so I'm not going to cry over it. Alright, this is the way. Alright, now. Let me open everything up here. I wished I had a huge house. Oh, nope, wrong button. I've got a light over here. It seems like it's missing. Alright. Now, on two sides, and this right here will work. On two sides, let's see, I don't need all of it. Oh, right, but I do want plenty on here to work with. More than I need. Alright. Put that up there. Alright, now. I would say 9 chances out of 10 probably easier or better if I iron everything. So hopefully it will work. Okay. Oh boy. Man, we went to Joann's today, and I wished I'd have thought and got a tool to work with 2.5-inch strips. I've got one to work with 2-inch strips, but not 2.5, which that most and definitely would have helped to have 2.5. Come on. I'm not happy about this. I cannot find my 2-inch tool to do this. And if that's the only little bit of material that I got sewed, I'm not going to worry about it. Because there ain't no need in it. Alright, now. Come on. I'm a little bit cold. I don't know. The heater may not be working in here. I guess I need to check on it. Because we've been without electricity too. Yeah, let's turn it on. That way we got some heat in here. Alright. Now, let's see if we can't work this right here out. And I can't remember which side. Okay, right here. We are going to try to sew it. Oh, come on. You're supposed to be up. Now, I gotta worry about being able to see it. Oh my gosh. You would do something like this, wouldn't you, Sandy?
My mom. But that's how I ended up with 4 years of my life wasted in the Georgia State prison system.
Holy cow, Ryan, that's absolutely horrible. It really is. You were put into a really difficult situation that there was no good way out of. You just dealt with it the best way you knew how. And yeah, that's a situation, like I said, that could happen to any of us. And it's important to not lose sight of the fact that it could possibly happen. It's best not to get too comfy in your life because you never know when something like that might come around. You really don't.
Well, a bit of advice to anyone that is listening: invest in LifeLock. It doesn't have to be like name brand, but a lot of banks, they offer LifeLock. Please, please, please do what you can to safeguard your identity, because I never did. And I thought, I was one of those, it'll never happen to me things. Well, going to prison is another, it'll never happen to me thing. Please do things that you need to do to safeguard your identity, because if they have stuff that monitors the dark web, and if your identity shows up, they can actually shut it down when they find it. If I had that at the time, I wouldn't be here right now. I would never have gone to prison. So please, y'all, get some kind of identity lock, whatever it is. Please do.
Yeah, that's very good advice for the aforementioned reasons. Well, Ryan, I guess it's time now. Please tell us about this most recent encounter. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay. So, in prisoners, they refer to prisons as camps. So y'all are going to hear me use some prison lingo, and I'll explain sort of what some of the prison lingo means. So maybe I'll learn something. But the first camp that I was at was way, way, way in South Georgia. We were like 2 counties up from the Florida border. In a city called Morgan, Georgia. The closest big city down there was Albany. Spent 18 months there. The second camp that I was at is in the city of Millen, Georgia. And Millen, Georgia is a suburb of Augusta. It's about 45 minutes to an hour south of Augusta. We're not far, or it wasn't far from the South Carolina border. In fact, that whole area is called the CSRA, which stands for Central Savannah River Area. And it encompasses, Augusta and the north side of Macon and, a whole bunch of just small little farming towns up there. Well, Jenkins County, which is where the city of Millen is, there are 2 sources of employment for this county. You have, your 2 options are you can be a farmer or you can work at the prison. There's nothing else. There is the farms and there is the prison. Well, the land that the prison was on was actually owned by a farmer. And the officers that worked the prison, the correctional officers, they would describe this farmer as the Donald Trump of Millen. Donald Trump owns, most of New York City. Well, this dude owns most of Jenkins County as far as the, land that has not been developed on. If there's something the way they word it is, if you see land down here that is not built on, he owns it. Okay, fair enough. Well, the back of the prison, it faced one of his fields. And it was a rotational field. And what I mean by that is sometimes they would have cotton planted, sometimes they would have corn planted. When this happened, it was corn crop out there. And if anyone's ever been in any farmland, anywhere they grow corn, corn can grow really, really, really tall. It's a very, very tall crop. Well, it was summer of 23. And I'm laying back in my bunk, and we had two different rec yards. Well, actually, let me start with the rec yard. We had two different rec yards. We had the big yard, and we had the small yard. Now, the big yard, it was for the whole compound. The housing areas are referred to as dorms by inmates, and a dorm is nothing more than where the inmates, you have the day room, which is where the TVs and the tables and all that are. You have the cuts, which is where the bunks are, and then you have the bathrooms and the showers and all that in the back. Well, there are 3 buildings on site, well, 4 if you include where the chow hall and all that is, the cafeteria. There's 3 buildings that house inmates. And they are broken up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different dorms. I had to count in my head. There's 10 separate dorms. Well, the rec yard was open. The big yard was open throughout the week. But, each day it was Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Each day it was a different building. We had 100 building, 200 building, and 300 building. I was in 300 building, which means our rec time, our big yard time was on Fridays. So it was the middle of summer, and in South Central Georgia, which this is really middle Georgia, but anywhere south of Atlanta, it is a sweat box. Even if it's nice and cool in the morning, the humidity is still going to just drench you. So I didn't feel like going out. I was laid back in my bunk reading. Well, all of a sudden, they'd been out for maybe half an hour. And when they open up Big Yard, it's open up all day. So they're out for like half an hour. It's, mid-morning. All of a sudden, everyone starts coming back in, and they're being rounded up by officers. Like, get back to your dorms, get back to your dorms. We got to lock down. We got to lock down. I'm like, wow. I was thinking that something had happened on the compound, and that's what everyone was thinking. So in prisons, there is a big issue with contraband cell phones. Inmates will pay correctional officers to smuggle in like straight talk phones for them. And they use those phones to get in touch with other people on the compound, people at different prisons, their family and friends that are out there on the street. They use it to basically run their lives as normal as they can while they're in prison, but they're illegal. You're not supposed to have them. They're contraband. So the people that had the phones, they start pulling them out, incognito, trying to hide them from the cameras, hide them from the officers, and they're trying to shoot off messages to whoever they can, people at this prison, people at other prisons, like, hey, we just went on lockdown. Did something happen in one of y'all's buildings, or did something happen in one of the prisons that's near us? Because that area of the state is super saturated with prisons. There's prisons all over down there because of how rural it is. It's close enough to major cities that people from the cities can commute if they want, but it's rural enough that people are comfortable with having a whole bunch of hoodlums down there, for lack of a better term. Well, we find out that, there's nothing going on. Nothing happened here at the prison. Nothing happened in any other prisons. Everything, it's smooth sailing as far as the Georgia Department of Corrections goes. It's, smooth sailing from here. We're on good waters. So we're scratching our heads like, well, what in the world happened? And the officers were really, really bad about not keeping us informed about what was going on. So we were just sort of left to speculate, but there was one officer who worked overnights, cannot remember what his name was for the life of me, but we were finally like, hey, what is going on? Why are we on lockdown? Because lockdown, it is a pain for officers. Like, they tried to avoid lockdown except for the most extreme circumstances, because everything has to come to us. Our food, medical. If you take medication, they have something called pill call. They would have to bring the pill cart down, which we call Pills on Wheels. they would have to bring that down to us, and it just made everything so much more of a hassle. It took a 10-minute ordeal and made it into an hour and a half problem. So they would avoid everything that they could to put us on lockdown. So the fact that they put us on lockdown told us that something major had happened, but we couldn't figure out what. Well, we finally were able to find out. And he said, well, he goes, I'll tell y'all, he goes, but y'all cannot tell anyone that it came from me. He said, the farmer that owns all of the land behind this prison, he said, he woke up this morning and he found 2 of his cows clean sliced down the middle, just mutilated. He said, just a precision slice right down the middle. He goes, 2 completely separate halves. And on top of that, he was missing 2, 3, 4, I forget the number of goats. He had a bunch of livestock, but he was missing a number of goats. And he found the carcasses of the goats on the other side of his property in the woods. And when I say other side of property, I'm not talking about you're walking from one side of your backyard to the other. I'm talking about you're having to get in a side-by-side and you have to take a 5-10 minute ride, 2.5 miles to the other side of the property. And they could not figure out how the goats got out of the pen because he had an actual enclosure for the goats. And something had gotten in there and taken the goats out and then mutilated them and just left them in the woods. So we were on lockdown because the county could not figure out what happened. I don't know if they thought that an inmate had got out and just went haywire on some cows or what, I don't know. But they put us on lockdown. Well, I think it was that night or the following night, I'm laying back in my bunk, I'm reading a Michael Connelly novel. I'm reading one of his Harry Bosch books, which are great. I love them. And my buddy Montana, he comes up, he goes, hey, come over to the door and listen to this. I'm like, man, it's like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, what do you want me to come listen to? He goes, just come listen. So I jump down off my bunk, and I walk over to the door that goes to the rec yard, the small yard, the one that is for each dorm. And I'm standing there for, I don't know, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I'm like, what am I supposed to be listening for? I don't hear anything. He goes, just listen. And I heard a scream that I had not heard in years. And it was that growl, howl, just demonic sound that I knew immediately what it was when I heard it. And I looked at my buddy Montana and I was like, I know exactly what that is. And he just sort of looked at me, he's all cocky, and he goes, oh, really? He goes, do you? He goes, well, please do tell. What is it? I was like, that, my friend, is a dog man. And he gave me this look, and he goes, what in the world is a dog man? And I told him the story about that night on the trail, and he was like, dude, he goes, no. He goes, you saw a bear. I was like, no, it was not a bear. It was not a bear. I was like, people tried to tell me that for years. I was like, it's not a bear, my man. He goes, no, you saw a bear. He goes, whatever. He goes, it's probably just a coyote. I was like, okay, yeah, think whatever. It's a dog, man, but I'll see you in the morning, whatever. Well, the next day, it rained that night, so the small yard was opened up. We were off lockdown. The small yard was opened up, and it was a lot cooler. So I decided that I was actually going to go out there and sit in the chairs and, finish off my book outside. So there were 120 people that were in the dorm. And there were maybe 30, 35, 40 at the most of us out there on the small yard. Some people were working out.
Alrighty, I have it tied here. Now let's look at the other side. Alright. So now we have it to where she can sit and watch videos while I go down. This snap is not going to work. I should have checked it. Oh, there it goes. No. It's not going to work. For some reason, it's not going to work. But it does give her something to look at as we are driving down the road. I think it turned out pretty good. All right. I hope you all fix you one.
Some people were just kicking back on the chairs reading. Some people were out there playing basketball, just doing whatever. Well, one of the guys, we called him Old School. He points. He goes, what is that? He goes, look at that. And I sort of look up from my book, and I look where he's pointing. He's pointing out into the field. And maybe 1,000, 1,500 feet, I just saw the top of a head over the corn. And I saw the ears. And as soon as I saw the ears, I put my book down. My buddy Montana was out there. I was like, Montana, I was like, come here. He did the little one finger come on thing. He goes, what? And I was like, look out into that field. And I was like, tell me what you see. He goes, I see ears. I was like, yeah. I was like, just wait. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, but just wait. Well, this thing stood up. And the first one I saw was maybe, I don't know, 7.5, 8 feet. This thing was a monster. It was at a minimum 11 feet. It may have been bigger, but it was at least 11 feet. And the thing, again, that drew my attention was its coat. This is mid-morning, early afternoon in the Georgia summer sunshine, and it looked like that you had dipped this thing in a tub of Vantablack, the blackest substance on earth, because it just absorbed all of the light. Nothing reflected off of it. It did not look shiny at all. It just looked like flat black. And I'm out there with people that are affiliated gang members, people that are assassins for those gangs. One of the people that was on the yard that day was an assassin for a gang who I'm not going to mention names of gangs, but he was an assassin, and he was in prison with life without parole for 6 murders. And he would always make the comment, he goes, well, that's only the ones that they know about, indicating that he had a lot more under his belt than just the 6 he got arrested for. He went white as a ghost. And I have never seen this man scared. This man is 6'5", 300 pounds of pure muscle, tattooed from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. He was, like the definition of the dorm alpha male. You didn't mess with him. No one messed with him. But this man tucked his tail and he went sprinting back inside, whimpering. So it stands up and it doesn't really look over at us. It's looking away. But I don't know if it didn't acknowledge us. I'm sure it knew that we were there, but it didn't feel a need to let us know that it knew that we were there, if that makes sense. That's a word spaghetti, but that's the easiest way I know how to describe it. So we go back in. And there was a guy, he had been in prison for like 30 to 35 years. We called him Old School. And he's stomping around the dorm, and he was like, it's a prophecy. He goes, it's the prophecy. Someone's like, Old School. They're like, man, what in the world are you hollering about? He goes, we just witnessed a demon. And everyone's like, a demon? And they're like, yeah, and I'm just sitting back not saying anything, just with my arms crossed, like, if y'all want to know what it is, all y'all got to do is come talk to this boy right here. I know what it is. Y'all can figure it out amongst yourselves, but I know. That was a demon. And prison is such a melting pot of people because people from all walks of life get locked up for whatever reason. So I was in there with people that they had been homeless their whole life, people that had owned multi-million-dollar companies, people that they just had petty theft charges, petty drug charges, people that had, multiple counts of murder, people from all different religions, Christians, Muslims, Wiccans, people that were agnostic, people that were atheists, people that were Buddhist, Hindu, everyone was in prison. So it was interesting to see people of different ethnical and religious backgrounds try to relate what they saw out there to their personal ethnical and religious beliefs. The Christians were saying it was a demon. The Muslims were quoting something from the Quran that I can't remember what it was. The Buddhists were saying it was one of their gods. The Hindus were saying pretty much the same. And the Wiccans, they were saying that it was something that the solar system or something had manifested, or I'm not really sure what Wiccans believe, but I know it's something with spirituality and solar manifestation or something. So they were saying that it was something sent by the cosmos to Earth. So I'm like, no, y'all are all wrong. It's just a dog man. But again, I should put a sign on myself that says, dog man expert, please ask questions. But didn't think to at the time. Well, a couple of days go by. Actually, more than a couple of days. It was weeks went by. And we're back out. And when I say weeks, I'm talking about maybe a month and a half, 2 months later. So it was a good time after. We're back out on the yard, the small yard, and it was getting to be nighttime. It was, wasn't getting dark, but it was getting to the part where the sun, sun's starting to dip below the horizon and things are starting to get dark quick. Well, they have something called the P truck, and P stands for perimeter. And the only job of the P truck is to drive around the perimeter of the prison all day and all night. And they're the only people in prison that are actually armed. The officers that work with inside the facility, they don't even have tasers. They have cans of pepper spray, but they don't have anything beyond that. The P truck, if you are an officer that works the P truck, you have a Glock 45, you have a Remington 12 gauge with buckshot, and you have an AR-15. Those are the three weapons that you have on, well, not on your person. The Glock's on your person, but the other two are just in the truck. Well, the P truck goes by, and it goes beyond where we can see, like around the corner, beyond where we can see, and we hear the tires screech, and we look up, and this truck is flying in reverse. I mean, flying. And the dude, he gets out, and he's got the 12 gauge in his hand. And he looks over to us, and he goes, y'all get back in your dorms. He goes, get back in your dorms now. And we didn't know what was going on. We just know that there was a correction officer with a 12 gauge in his hand, acting like he just saw the Virgin Mary appear in front of him. So we don't really question anything. We go back inside. We're not going to argue with the man that has the gun, was our thinking. Do not argue with the man that has the gun. So we go back inside. We get in there, and I mean, not even a minute later, officers are swarming the building. We're on lockdown. We're on lockdown. We're on lockdown. I'm like, what in the world? And then the power goes out. We're like, what is going on? Like, okay, what's going on? We could not figure out for days what was going on. And then finally, that same officer, the one that told us about the cow mutilations, he came back, and he was working night shift, and we were like, man, Barnes, that was his name, Officer Barnes. We were like, Barnes, what is going on? He goes, dude was doing the P truck rounds. He goes, and he claims that this giant creature jumped over the fence and landed in front of his truck. I was like, imagine that, really? I was like, well, how would you describe the creature? And he was like, he described it as a werewolf. And I was like, okay, about 11 feet tall. And he goes, yeah, how'd you know? I was like, we saw it out there in the field like a month and a half, 2 months ago, and told him what happened. The reason that the power went out is the furthest perimeter fence is an electric fence. And the way it's electrified is you've got the chain link fence with the razor wire on top, and then you have strips of electric band that run like a ladder up and down the fence all the way around. Now, these fences, they are designed not to just stop you, they are designed to drop you dead. In fact, while I was incarcerated, there was a lawsuit that came about with someone who tried to escape, and he grabbed the fence, not knowing that it was electric, and it stopped his heart, and it killed him. And they were trying to determine whether it was the actual voltage that killed him, whether it was cranked up too high, or if it was because he had a underlying heart condition and the electricity just set it off and dropped him. But these things, they are designed to not only make you hesitate, they are designed to fry you, okay? They are serious. This thing sliced through the wires of the electric fence, causing the whole prison compound to short out and blow pretty much every fuse they had. We finally got generator backup power going, but it sliced through the electric fence, the wires of it, and it didn't even phase them. Barnes told me that he saw where the mark or the slice was, and he goes, those things, he goes, they're serious. He goes, they are heavy duty hardware. He goes, it's not just wire. He goes, it is steel rod that is actually electrified from within. He goes, it's something that if you wanted to cut through yourself, after you turn it off, obviously, you would have to take, a very, very specialized cutoff wheel or a sawzall and go through it. He goes, you can't just cut through something like that. He goes, someone, went out there with some serious machinery and cut through this. And I was like, it wasn't a someone, it was a something. Well, that got the prison going because people had kind of forgotten about that day out on the small yard where we saw it out in the cornfield. But after this happened with it jumping in front of the P truck and getting through the fence and all sorts of stuff, we started hearing the howls in the prisons at night. And prisons, they are built to be strong, but they are not built to be comfortable. So they are built cheap. They can withstand a hurricane. And I know this because where I was got hit by Hurricane Helena. In fact, we were the last area in Georgia it hit before it completely wiped Asheville off the face of the earth. And it hit us hard, and it's still standing. They are designed to take the worst that Mother Nature can throw at them, but they are built very cheaply. If that, that's kind of oxymoronic, or that's kind of an oxymoron, but it's the truth. The walls are very thin. They are corrugated metal. Thick corrugated metal, but they're corrugated metal nonetheless. And there's no insulation. By the grace of God, the second prison I was at had air conditioning and heat. Most prisons in the state of Georgia have no air conditioning and no heat. They are sweat boxes. But you can hear everything that is going on outside. We were not too far from an Air Force base, and we could hear airplanes, jets and helicopters all day, all night. Trains off in the distance, we could hear them like they were right next to the prison. You hear everything. And we just kept hearing those howls throughout the whole night. In the days and weeks following this, it just went on for probably a month. From the first time something happened to the last time, it was probably a 3-month time span. And finally, people were like, okay, we want to know what this is. The inmates were. And one of the guys in my cut, he had a phone. And he was out there that day. And I was like, look, you want to know what this is? He goes, yes. He goes, what is this? I was like, go on your phone. I was like, go on YouTube. So he did. I was like, pull up this dude named Dogman Encounters. And he looked at me. He goes, Dogman Encounters? He goes, what kind of stuff is that? And I was like, just do it. I was like, go on there. I was like, listen to some of his stuff and tell me that's not what we saw. So he goes on there and he listens to, I don't know how many, ones he listened to, but he listened to a few. And he comes back and he goes, you ain't kidding. He goes, that describes to a T, what you saw or what we saw. And then I told him, I was like, okay. I was like, well, go on there and look up episode 250. And he goes, why? I was like, that's my episode. And he goes, you were on this show? I was like, I had an encounter years ago. I was like, my Jeep was attacked by one of these things. He goes, no. He goes, you lying. I was like, I'm not lying. I was like, go to episode 250 and tell me you don't recognize that voice. So he went on episode 250 and he listened to it and he goes, you ain't kidding. So he started telling people that, hey, that white boy there, Ryan, he knows about this thing. So people started coming up to me and asking all kinds of questions. And when I say people, I'm talking about people that normally would not even speak to me because I'm an unaffiliated, I'm an affiliate. I'm not a gang member. They only speak to their own gang. They don't talk to anyone else. But they're coming up to me like, hey, let me holler at you. Let me get in your ear. I need to know what this was that I saw. And I was able to educate a lot of them on what it was. And, the ones that had phones, I would be like, you've got a phone, go to Dogman Encounters on YouTube. So you have a whole audience in prison you don't even know about. But I was able to educate a lot of them about what it was. And I made them realize that, this whole kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species thing that you learn in, 9th grade biology. I'm like, yeah, it's great, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. I was like, there are things out there beyond the realm of what you can even imagine that exists. And I was like, we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about Dogman, we're talking about skinwalkers, we're talking about Mothman, we're talking about the Loch Ness Monster, we're talking about all these different type of cryptids that are out there that you think they're nothing more than folklore. I was like, you think they're nothing more than entertainment on the History Channel. I was like, but let me ask you this. They had to get their start somewhere. All these people, they didn't just sit around a table one day in a production studio and say, you know what? We're going to make a show about trying to find Bigfoot, or we're going to make a show about a ranch out in Utah that has skinwalker problem. Yeah, people will definitely watch that. Well, they had to get that from somewhere, and production companies, they're not going to waste the time and effort to try to build a show around something that doesn't have plausible results. They're not going to spend all the production budget to do that because no one would watch it. You don't watch a show that doesn't have a tangibility of reality. That's what makes those shows so interesting, is the reality of it. People are seeing this evidence be presented before them on television, and they're like, oh, wow, this stuff actually could be real. It came from somewhere. All of this folklore, all of these wives' tales, they had to have an origin point. People from all these different areas of the world didn't just one day decide that, hey, we want to make up this story. No, they had to start from somewhere, and I got a lot of them to realize that. And a lot of these, not to be disrespectful to them, but they are very closed-minded individuals. they only think about one thing only, and that is surviving prison, because a lot of them, they were never going to leave. That was their home. So they only had to focus on survival. But the fact that I was able to actually get through to them and show them that, hey, there is all this stuff out there. Sorry you're never going to see it, but hey, it's out there. It blew their minds. I mean, it was really cool to actually be able to educate them. And they're like, so you're not freaking out over this thing? And I was like, not really. They're like, well, what if it tries to get in? And I was like, I don't think it's going to. And I was like, by the time this thing tries to get in, you're going to have a P officer in a P truck coming out with a shotgun trying to blast at it. And I was like, now it ain't going to kill it. It's going to, tick it off. I was like, but it'll probably drive it away. I was like, yeah, it's not going to break in. It's not going to be able to get into us. We're like a Walmart grocery store for it, probably. But he was like, a lot of them, they were just mind blown that these things existed. And they would have never believed it unless they were out there that day and saw it. But that is my in-prison dog pen encounter story.
That's one heck of an experience. Did the prison ever change policies now that they knew that the dog man was out there?
Not that I am aware of. They didn't really have a lot of policies to begin with. Georgia prisons are kind of a free-for-all. You can do really pretty much anything you want. So there's really no policy. There's no structure. And I don't think they implemented anything more, because one day the officer comes in, Barnes, he just comes in and says, yeah, that problem with this werewolf thing, he goes, it's taken care of. And we were like, what do you mean it's taken care of? He goes, oh, no, it's taken care of. And we were like, well, can we get like some specifics on this? Like, okay, that's a very broad net, taken care of. That can encompass a bunch of stuff. But, after that, we never heard it or saw it ever again. There was never any problems.
Really makes you wonder what was behind that. If the government might have come in and done something to rid the area of it, or what happened?
Well, what's even more interesting is I tried to look up cattle mutilations for Jenkins County in that time frame, and I could find nothing. There was no information at all about any missing goats or cattle mutilations or anything, which in a farming town, that's a big deal. If cows are getting mutilated, people want to know about that, but I could find nothing about it. It was like it had been swept under the rug and wiped away.
Oh, I'm sure they did keep that hush-hush.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, that's not the kind of thing that they want to get out and have people talking about, but when things like that start happening, especially in a small town like that, people do. Yeah, that's inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
Did the prisoners change their behaviors after the word got out about that 11-footer being around?
Not really. You have to think that you have to put on a certain persona in prison, which I never did. I was the same person in prison as I am outside of prison, because I'm like, I have no reason to change. If you don't like me, you don't like me. I can't help that.